Section 45 of Shelley, Selected Poems and Prose. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Section 45, Epipsychidion. Verses addressed to the noble and unfortunate lady Emilia V., now imprisoned in the convent of... Advertisement. The writer of the following lines died at Florence, as he was preparing for a voyage to one of the wildest of the Sporades, which he had bought, and where he had fitted up the ruins of an old building, and where it was his hope to have realized a scheme of life suited perhaps to that happier and better world of which he is now an inhabitant, but hardly practicable in this. His life was singular, less on account of the romantic vicissitudes which diversified it than the ideal tinge which it received from his own character and feelings. The present poem, like the Vita Nuova of Dante, is sufficiently intelligible to a certain class of readers without a matter-of-fact history of the circumstances to which it relates, and to a certain other class it must ever remain incomprehensible from a defect of a common organ of perception for the ideas of which it treats. The present poem appears to have been intended by the writer as the dedication to some longer one. The stanza on the opposite page is almost a literal translation from Dante's famous canzone, Voi qu'intendendo ietezzo ciel movete, etc. The presumptuous application of the concluding lines to his own composition will raise a smile at the expense of my unfortunate friend, be it a smile not of contempt, but pity. S. My song, I fear that thou wilt find but few who fitly shalt conceive thy reasoning, of such hard matter dost thou entertain. Whence, if by misadventure chance should bring thee to base company, as chance may do, quite unaware of what thou dost contain, I prithee comfort thy sweet self again, my last delight. Tell them that they are dull, and bid them own that thou art beautiful. Epipsychidion. Sweet spirit, sister of that orphan one, whose empire is the name thou weepest on, in my heart's temple I suspend to thee these votive wreaths of withered memory. Poor captive bird, who from thy narrow cage pourest such music that it might assuage the rugged hearts of those who prisoned thee, were they not deaf to all sweet melody. This song shall be thy rose. Its petals pale are dead indeed, my adored nightingale, but soft and fragrant is the faded blossom, and it has no thorn left to wound thy bosom. High spirit-winged heart, who dost forever beat thine unfeeling bars with vain endeavor, till those bright plumes of thought, in which arrayed it ever soared this low and worldly shade, lie shattered, and thy panting wounded breast stains with dear blood its unmaternal nest. I weep vain tears. Blood would less bitter be, yet poured forth gladlier, could it profit thee. Seraph of heaven, too gentle to be human, veiling beneath that radiant form of woman all that is insupportable in thee of light and love and immortality. Sweet benediction in the eternal curse, veiled glory of this lampless universe, thou moon beyond the clouds, thou living form among the dead, thou star above the storm, thou wonder and thou beauty and thou terror, thou harmony of nature's art, thou mirror in whom, as in the splendor of the sun, all shapes look glorious which thou gazest on. Ay, even the dim words which obscure thee now flash lightning-like with unaccustomed glow. I pray thee that thou blot from this sad song all of its much mortality and wrong, with those clear drops which start like sacred dew from the twin lights thy sweet soul darkens through, weeping till sorrow becomes ecstasy. Then smile on it, so that it may not die. I never thought before my death to see youth's vision thus made perfect. Emily, I love thee, though the world by no thin name will hide that love from its unvalued shame. Would we two had been twins of the same mother, or that the name my heart lent to another could be a sister's bond for her and thee, blending two beams of one eternity. Yet were one lawful and the other true. These names, though dear, could paint not as is due. How beyond refuge I am thine! Ah me, I am not thine, I am a part of thee. Sweet lamp, my moth-like muse has burned its wings, or like a dying swan who soars and sings, young love should teach time in his own grey style all that thou art. Art thou not void of guile, a lovely soul formed to be blessed and bless? A well of sealed and secret happiness, whose waters like blithe light and music are, vanquishing dissonance and gloom? A star which moves not in the moving heavens, alone? A smile amid dark frowns, a gentle tone amid rude voices, a beloved light, a solitude, a refuge, a delight, a lute which those whom love has taught to play make music on, to soothe the roughest day and lull fond grief asleep, a buried treasure, a cradle of young thoughts of wingless pleasure, a violet-shrouded grave of woe. I measure the world of fancies, seeking one like thee, and find, alas, mine own infirmity. She met me, stranger, upon life's rough way, and lured me towards sweet death, as night by day, winter by spring, or sorrow by swift hope, led into light, life, peace. An antelope, in the suspended impulse of its lightness, were less ethereally light. The brightness of her divinest presence trembles through her limbs, as underneath a cloud of dew, embodied in the windless heaven of June, amid the splendor winged stars, the moon burns inextinguishably beautiful. And from her lips, as from a hyacinth full of honey-dew, a liquid murmur drops, killing the sense with passion, sweet as stops of planetary music heard in trance. In her mild lights the starry spirits dance, the sunbeams of those wells which ever leap under the lightnings of the soul, too deep for the brief fathom line of thought or sense. The glory of her being issuing thence stains the dead, blank, cold air with a warm shade of unentangled intermixture, made by love of light and motion, one intense diffusion, one serene omnipresence, whose flowing outlines mingle in their flowing around her cheeks and utmost fingers glowing with the unintermitted blood which there quivers, as in a fleece of snow-like air the crimson pulse of living morning quiver, continuously prolonged, and ending never, till they are lost, and in that beauty furled which penetrates and clasps and fills the world, scarce visible from extreme loveliness. Warm fragrance seems to fall from her light dress and her loose hair, and where some heavy tress the air of her own speed has disentwined, the sweetness seems to satiate the faint wind, and in the soul a wild odor is felt, beyond the sense, like fiery dews that melt into the bosom of a frozen bud. See where she stands, a mortal shape endued with love and life and light and deity, and motion which may change but cannot die, an image of some bright eternity, a shadow of some golden dream, a splendor leaving the third sphere pilotless, a tender reflection of the eternal moon of love, under whose motions life's dull billows move, a metaphor of spring and youth and morning, a vision like incarnate April, warning with smiles and tears Frost the anatomy into his summer grave. Ah, woe is me! What have I dared? Where am I lifted? How shall I descend and perish not? I know that love makes all things equal. I have heard by mine own heart this joyous truth averred. The spirit of the worm beneath the sod, in love and worship, blends itself with God. Spouse, sister, angel, pilot of the fate whose course has been so starless, oh, too late, beloved! Oh, too soon adored by me! For in the fields of immortality my spirit should at first have worshipped thine, a divine presence in a place divine, or should have moved beside it on this earth, a shadow of that substance from its birth. But not as now. I love thee, yes, I feel that on the fountain of my heart a seal is set to keep its waters pure and bright for thee, since in those tears thou hast delight. Are we not formed as notes of music are for one another, though dissimilar? Such difference without discord as can make those sweetest sounds in which all spirits shake as trembling leaves in a continuous air? Thy wisdom speaks in me, and bids me dare beacon the rocks on which high hearts are wrecked. I never was attached to that great sect whose doctrine is that each one should select out of the crowd a mistress or a friend, and all the rest, though fair and wise, commend to cold oblivion, though it is in the code of modern morals, and the beaten road which those poor slaves with weary footsteps tread, who travel to their home among the dead by the broad highway of the world, and so, with one chained friend, perhaps a jealous foe, the dreariest and the longest journey go. True love in this differs from gold and clay, that to divide is not to take away. Love is like understanding that grows bright, gazing on many truths. 'Tis like thy light, imagination, which from earth and sky, and from the depths of human fantasy, as from 1,000 prisms and mirrors, fills the universe with glorious beams, and kills error, the worm, with many a sun-like arrow of its reverberated lightning. Narrow the heart that loves, the brain that contemplates, the life that wears, the spirit that creates one object and one form, and builds thereby a sepulchre for its eternity. Mind from its object differs most in this: evil from good, misery from happiness, the baser from the nobler, the impure and frail from what is clear and must endure. If you divide suffering and dross, you may diminish till it is consumed away. If you divide pleasure and love and thought, each part exceeds the whole, and we know not how much, while any yet remains unshared, of pleasure may be gained, of sorrow spared. The truth is that deep well, whence sages draw the unenvied light of hope, the eternal law by which those live to whom this world of life is as a garden ravaged, and whose strife tills for the promise of a later birth the wilderness of this Elysian earth. There was a being whom my spirit oft met on its vision wanderings far aloft, in the clear golden prime of my youth's dawn, upon the fairy isles of sunny lawn, amid the enchanted mountains and the caves of divine sleep, and on the air-like waves of wonder-level dream, whose tremulous floor paved her light steps. On an imagined shore, under the gray beak of some promontory she met me, robed in such exceeding glory that I beheld her not. In solitudes her voice came to me through the whispering woods, and from the fountains, and the odors deep of flowers, which, like lips murmuring in their sleep of the sweet kisses which had lulled them there, breathed but of her to the enamored air. And from the breezes, whether low or loud, and from the rain of every passing cloud, and from the singing of the summer birds, and from all sounds, all silence, in the words of antique verse and high romance, in form, sound, color, in whatever checks that storm which with the shattered present chokes the past, and in that best philosophy whose taste makes this cold common hell, our life, a doom as glorious as a fiery martyrdom. Her spirit was the harmony of truth. Then from the caverns of my dreamy youth I sprang, as one sandaled with plumes of fire, and towards the lodestar of my one desire I flitted, like a dizzy moth, whose flight is as a dead leaf's in the owlet light, when it would seek in Hesper's setting sphere a radiant death, a fiery sepulchre, as if it were a lamp of earthly flame. But she, whom prayers or tears then could not tame, passed, like a god throned on a winged planet, whose burning plumes to tenfold swiftness fan it, into the dreary cone of our life's shade. And as a man with mighty loss dismayed, I would have followed, though the grave between yawned like a gulf whose spectres are unseen, when a voice said, "O thou of hearts the weakest, the phantom is beside thee whom thou seekest." Then I, "Where?" The world's echo answered, "Where?" And in that silence, and in my despair, I questioned every tongueless wind that flew over my tower of mourning, if it knew whither 'twas fled, this soul out of my soul, and murmured names and spells which have control over the sightless tyrants of our fate. But neither prayer nor verse could dissipate the night which closed on her, nor uncreate that world within this chaos, mine and me, of which she was the veiled divinity, the world, I say, of thoughts that worshipped her. And therefore I went forth, with hope and fear and every gentle passion sick to death, feeding my course with expectation's breath, into the wintry forest of our life, and struggling through its error with vain strife, and stumbling in my weakness and my haste, and half bewildered by new forms, I passed, seeking among those untaught foresters if I could find one form resembling hers, in which she might have masked herself from me. There one whose voice was venomed melody sat by a well, under blue nightshade bowers. The breath of her false mouth was like faint flowers, her touch was as electric poison. Flame out of her looks into my vitals came, and from her living cheeks and bosom flew a killing air, which pierced like honeydew into the core of my green heart, and lay upon its leaves, until, as hair grown gray o'er a young brow, they hid its unblown prime with ruins of unseasonable time. In many mortal forms I rashly sought the shadow of that idol of my thought, and some were fair, but beauty dies away. Others were wise, but honeyed words betray. And one was true, oh, why not true to me? Then, as a hunted deer that could not flee, I turned upon my thoughts, and stood at bay, wounded and weak and panting. The cold day trembled for pity of my strife and pain. When like a noonday dawn there shone again deliverance. One stood on my path who seemed as like the glorious shape which I had dreamed as is the moon, whose changes ever run into themselves to the eternal sun. the cold chaste moon, the queen of heaven's bright isles, who makes all beautiful on which she smiles, that wandering shrine of soft yet icy flame, which ever is transformed, yet still the same, and warms not, but illumines. Young and fair as the descended spirit of that sphere, she hid me, as the moon may hide the night from its own darkness, until all was bright between the heaven and earth of my calm mind. And as a cloud charioted by the wind, she led me to a cave in that wild place, and sat beside me, with her downward face illumining my slumbers, like the moon waxing and waning o'er Endymion. And I was laid asleep, spirit and limb, and all my being became bright or dim, as the moon's image in a summer sea, according as she smiled or frowned on me. And there I lay, within a chaste cold bed. Alas, I then was nor alive nor dead, for at her silver voice came death and life, unmindful each of their accustomed strife, masked like twin babes, a sister and a brother, the wandering hopes of one abandoned mother. And through the cavern without wings they flew, and cried, "Away! He is not of our crew." I wept, and though it be a dream, I weep. What storms then shook the ocean of my sleep, blotting that moon, whose pale and waning lips then shrank as in the sickness of eclipse, and how my soul was as a lampless sea, and who was then its tempest, and when she, the planet of that hour, was quenched, what frost crept o'er those waters, till from coast to coast the moving billows of my being fell into a death of ice, immovable. And then what earthquakes made it gape and split, the white moon smiling all the while on it, these words conceal. If not, each word would be the key of staunchless tears. Weep not for me. At length into the obscure forest came the vision I had sought through grief and shame. Athwart that wintry wilderness of thorns flashed from her motion splendor like the morn's, and from her presence life was radiated through the gray earth and branches bare and dead, so that her way was paved and roofed above with flowers as soft as thoughts of budding love, and music from her respiration spread like light. All other sounds were penetrated by the small, still, sweet spirit of that sound, so that the savage winds hung mute around, and odors warm and fresh fell from her hair, dissolving the dull cold in the frore air. Soft as an incarnation of the sun, when light is changed to love, this glorious one floated into the cavern where I lay, and called my spirit, and the dreaming clay was lifted by the thing that dreamed below, as smoke by fire, and in her beauty's glow I stood, and felt the dawn of my long night was penetrating me with living light. I knew it was the vision veiled from me so many years, that it was Emily. Twin spheres of light who rule this passive earth, this world of loves, this me, and into birth awaken all its fruits and flowers, and dart magnetic might into its central heart, and lift its billows and its mists, and guide by everlasting laws each wind and tide to its fit cloud and its appointed cave, and lull its storms, each in the craggy grave which was its cradle, luring to faint bowers the armies of the rainbow-winged showers. And as those married lights, which from the towers of heaven look forth, and fold the wandering globe in liquid sleep and splendor, as a robe, and all their many mingled influence blend, if equal, yet unlike, to one sweet end. So ye, bright regents, with alternate sway, govern my sphere of being, night and day. Thou not disdaining even a borrowed might, thou not eclipsing a remoter light, and through the shadow of the seasons three, from spring to autumn's sere maturity, light it into the winter of the tomb, where it may ripen to a brighter bloom. Thou too, O comet beautiful and fierce, who drew the heart of this frail universe towards thine own, till wrecked in that convulsion, alternating attraction and repulsion, thine went astray, and that was rent in twain. O float into our azure heaven again, be there love's folding star at thy return. The living sun will feed thee from its urn of golden fire, the moon will veil her horn in thy last smiles, adoring even and morn will worship thee with incense of calm breath, and lights and shadows, as the star of death and birth is worshipped by those sisters wild, called Hope and Fear. Upon the heart are piled their offerings, of this sacrifice divine, a world shall be the altar. Lady mine, scorn not these flowers of thought, the fading birth, which from its heart of hearts that plant puts forth, whose fruit, made perfect by thy sunny eyes, will be as of the trees of paradise. The day is come, and thou wilt fly with me, to whatsoever of dull mortality is mine, remain a vestal sister still. To the intense, the deep, the imperishable, not mine, but me, henceforth be thou united, even as a bride, delighting and delighted. The hour is come, the destined star has risen, which shall descend upon a vacant prison. The walls are high, the gates are strong, thick set the sentinels. But true love never yet was thus constrained. It overleaps all fence, like lightning, with invisible violence, piercing its continents, like heaven's free breath, which he who grasps can hold not. Liker death, who rides upon a thought, and makes his way through temple, tower, and palace, and the array of arms. More strength has love than he or they, for it can burst his charnel, and make free the limbs in chains, the heart in agony, the soul in dust and chaos. Emily, a ship is floating in the harbor now. A wind is hovering o'er the mountain's brow. There is a path on the sea's azure floor. No keel has ever plowed that path before. The halcyons brood around the foamless isles. The treacherous ocean has forsworn its wiles. The merry mariners are bold and free. Say, my heart's sister, wilt thou sail with me? Our bark is as an albatross, whose nest is a far Eden of the purple east, and we between her wings will sit, while night and day and storm and calm pursue their flight, our ministers along the boundless sea, treading each other's heels unheededly. It is an isle under Ionian skies, beautiful as a wreck of paradise. And for the harbors are not safe and good, this land would have remained a solitude, but for some pastoral people native there, who from the Elysian clear and golden air draw the last spirit of the age of gold, simple and spirited, innocent and bold. The blue Aegean girds this chosen home, with ever-changing sound and light and foam, kissing the sifted sands and caverns hoar, and all the winds wandering along the shore undulate with the undulating tide. There are thick woods where sylvan forms abide, and many a fountain, rivulet, and pond, as clear as elemental diamond, or serene morning air, and far beyond the mossy tracks made by the goats and deer, which the rough shepherd treads but once a year, pierce into glades, caverns, and bowers, and halls, built round with ivy, which the waterfalls, illumining, with sound that never fails, accompany the noonday nightingales. And all the place is peopled with sweet airs. The light, clear element which the isle wears is heavy with the scent of lemon flowers, which floats like mist laden with unseen showers, and falls upon the eyelids like faint sleep. And from the moss violets and jonquils peep, and dart their arrowy odor through the brain, till you might faint with that delicious pain. And every motion, odor, beam, and tone with that deep music is in unison, which is a soul within the soul. They seem like echoes of an antenatal dream. It is an isle twixt heaven, air, earth, and sea, cradled and hung in clear tranquillity, bright as that wandering Eden Lucifer, washed by the soft blue oceans of young air. It is a favored place. Famine or blight, pestilence, war, and earthquake never light upon its mountain peaks. Blind vultures, they sail onward far upon their fatal way. The winged storms, chanting their thunder psalm to other lands, leave azure chasms of calm over this isle, or weep themselves in dew, from which its fields and woods ever renew their green and golden immortality. And from the sea there rise, and from the sky there fall, clear exhalations, soft and bright. Veil after veil, each hiding some delight, which sun or moon or zephyr draw aside, till the isle's beauty, like a naked bride glowing at once with love and loveliness, blushes and trembles at its own excess, yet like a buried lamp, a soul no less burns in the heart of this delicious isle, an atom of the eternal, whose own smile unfolds itself, and may be felt, not seen, o'er the gray rocks, blue waves, and forests green, filling their bare and void interstices. But the chief marvel of the wilderness is a lone dwelling, built by whom or how, none of the rustic island people know. 'Tis not a tower of strength, though with its height it overtops the woods, but for delight some wise and tender ocean king, ere crime had been invented, in the world's young prime, reared it, a wonder of that simple time, an envy of the isles, a pleasure house made sacred to his sister and his spouse. It scarce seems now a wreck of human art, but as it were titanic, in the heart of earth, having assumed its form, then grown out of the mountains, from the living stone, lifting itself in caverns light and high. For all the antique and learned imagery has been erased, and in the place of it the ivy and the wild vine interknit the volumes of their many twining stems. Parasite flowers illume with dewy gems the lampless halls, and when they fade, the sky peeps through their winter woof of tracery, with moonlight patches, or star atoms keen, or fragments of the day's intense serene, working mosaic on their Parian floors. And day and night, aloof from the high towers and terraces, the earth and ocean seem to sleep in one another's arms, and dream of waves, flowers, clouds, woods, rocks, and all that we read in their smiles and call reality. This isle and house are mine, and I have vowed thee to be lady of the Solitude, and I have fitted up some chambers there, looking towards the golden eastern air, and level with the living winds, which flow like waves above the living waves below. I have sent books and music there, and all those instruments with which high spirits call the future from its cradle, and the past out of its grave, and make the present last in thoughts and joys which sleep but cannot die, folded within their own eternity. Our simple life wants little, and true taste hires not the pale drudge luxury to waste the scene it would adorn, and therefore still Nature with all her children haunts the hill. The ring dove in the embowering ivy yet keeps up her love lament, and the owls flit round the evening tower, and the young stars glance between the quick bats in their twilight dance. The spotted deer bask in the fresh moonlight before our gate, and the slow, silent night is measured by the pants of their calm sleep. Be this our home in life, and when years heap their withered hours, like leaves, on our decay, let us become the overhanging day, the living soul of this Elysian isle, conscious, inseparable, one. Meanwhile, we two will rise and sit and walk together under the roof of blue Ionian weather, and wander in the meadows, or ascend the mossy mountains, where the blue heavens bend with lightest winds to touch their paramour, or linger where the pebble-paven shore, under the quick, faint kisses of the sea, trembles and sparkles as with ecstasy, possessing and possessed by all that is within that calm circumference of bliss, and by each other, till to love and live be one. Or at the noontide hour arrive where some old cavern horror seems yet to keep the moonlight of the expired night asleep, through which the awakened day can never peep, a veil for our seclusion, close as nights, where secure sleep may kill thine innocent lights. Sleep, the fresh dew of languid love, the rain whose drops quench kisses till they burn again. And we will talk until thought's melody become too sweet for utterance, and it die in words, to live again in looks, which dart with thrilling tone into the voiceless heart, harmonizing silence without a sound. Our breath shall intermix, our bosoms bound, and our veins beat together, and our lips, with other eloquence than words, eclipse the soul that burns between them, and the wells which boil under our being's inmost cells. The fountains of our deepest life shall be confused in passion's golden purity, as mountain springs under the morning sun. We shall become the same, we shall be one spirit within two frames. Oh, wherefore two? One passion in twin hearts, which grows and grew, till like two meteors of expanding flame, those fears instinct with it become the same, touch, mingle, are transfigured, ever still burning, yet ever inconsumable, in one another's substance finding food, like flames too pure and light and unimbued to nourish their bright lives with baser prey, which point to heaven and cannot pass away. One hope within two wills, one will beneath two overshadowing minds, one life, one death, one heaven, one hell, one immortality, and one annihilation. Woe is me! The winged words on which my soul would pierce into the height of love's rare universe are chains of lead around its flight of fire. I pant, I sink, I tremble, I expire. Weak verses go, kneel at your sovereign's feet and say, we are the masters of thy slave. What wouldest thou with us and ours and thine? Then call your sisters from oblivion's cave, all singing loud, love's very pain is sweet, but its reward is in the world divine, which if not here, it builds beyond the grave. So shall ye live when I am there. Then haste over the hearts of men, until ye meet Marina, Vanna, Primus, and the rest, and bid them love each other, and be blest, and leave the troop which errs, and which reproves, and come and be my guest, for I am love's. End of Section 45, Epipsychidion, by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio.